Hello, hammers and hammerettes. The days are ticking down before the start of the season, and the transfer rumours are going wild. On a strikers front, all I seem to be hearing is Duran. Apparently, we're hungry like the wolf to get this over the line. He's a young talent like Rio, so let's save a little prayer that we can get this done. Right. Sorry about that. Let's get things serious. So, John Duran, the 20-year-old Colombian and Aston Villa striker, seems to be our number one target. Fabrizio Romano's recent update is that we've bid 32 million plus Lewis Orford for the striker. So obviously he's been sought out by Tim Stainton or Julian Lopetegui. They obviously really fancy him. So I mean, you've got to trust that to a point. It will be a gamble because he's 20 years old. 22 goals in 102 appearances, I think. Although a lot of them have come off the bench. So he's a young lad, and we're potentially signing someone who's going to develop to be a top striker. So it's a big gamble. Aston Villa apparently want a package of around 40 million after paying 18 million for him last season, I think. I think he's shown an interest in coming to West Ham, and I guess without knowing much about him apart from his stats and seeing much of him, it's to me it's a gamble. It's a gamble that could pay off, but if it doesn't pay off, then like one of the most important positions for us as a striker, someone who is going to bang in goals. If it doesn't really work out for him, he's still a young player, and to expect him to play week in, week out, if it don't kind of work out, then we might look back in hindsight and think we would have been better going for a different option. We do have different options, obviously. Bowen can play through the middle, Kudos can potentially play through the middle, Antonio obviously has been our most recognised striker of recent times. And as of yet, none of us really know how Lopetegui is going to set up. Obviously, Ings as well, who I do actually rate, Danny Ings. Playing as a lone striker, I think he gets a bit isolated. But anyone in the box who you'd want the ball to fall to, from my point of view, would be Danny Ings. Is an instinctive striker and finisher. So we can't forget about Danny Ings, and it looks like potentially he will be staying. But yeah, we don't know how Julian Lopetegui is going to set up. I guess, I hope, I absolutely pray it's a little bit more attacking than what we've seen under David Moyes, because the last season especially, watching West Ham was just absolutely dire. I mean, the West Ham fans, we've got a lot of stick for slagging off Moyes. And what he achieved at the club was like fantastic, don't get me wrong, but the style of play, you'd probably be more entertained like sitting in the middle of a cemetery, to be honest with you. And you know, when he first come in and he's trying to save us from relegation, you can accept that he's setting up with five at the back and trying to hit teams on the counter attack. But like in recent times, with having the attacking players at his disposal that he has, to still set up that way, which is very predictable, I think was terrible, to be honest with you. Everyone says that he's a defensive manager, but then if you look at how many goals we conceded last season, then that didn't really add up, did it? So we had an attacking squad playing a defensive style, and the defensive style ended up with us conceding too many goals for us to consider to be a team pushing for them European places. Right, so moving on, I've done a video last week about the potential possibility of West Ham exploring the option to sign Orford Toney. And that was born out of comments that I heard from Duran Orford Toney on TalkSport, who is the Peterborough chairman. He said that if there's a betting man, he expected Orford Toney to be a West Ham player. Another comment that backs that up was on his most recent The Hard Truth podcast, where he said that Orford Toney would be leaving Brentford this season. So since I'd done my video, I've seen a few more journalists, a few more posts about the possibility of Orford Toney coming to us, and apparently he's pushing for the move. He's basically saying to Brentford, if you don't let me go this summer, then I'll walk away for nothing next season. Also heard today that the striker that Brentford have brought in has just got an injury, so I don't know how that will impact things. Now, my personal views on this is that I would absolutely love Orford Toney for West Ham. And I think where I'm talking about with Duran, it will be more of a gamble. I think with Toney, it's not a gamble. It's not a gamble. He don't fit the model of buying young players and stuff like that. He won't have a sell-on clause. But I think Orford Toney now is a ready-made person to come in, lead the line and be a focal point for us and score goals. And I think if you put Orford Toney in the West Ham team now up front, then we become instantly a more formidable force than if we put John Duran in. So that's just my thoughts, but I was kind of hopeful when I heard of what Duran Orford Toney had to say, but my hope is kind of like simmering a little bit now, because logically the way I look upon things is, when Orford Toney decided that he didn't want to stay at Brentford, I think in his head he wanted to move to a bigger club. Now, unfortunately, no one has come in from it for him. And going back to Duran Orford Toney, he said it was only really West Ham and Tottenham that were in the race for him. Now, from a player's point of view, he's got a year left on his contract. If he stayed at Brentford and he didn't move this summer, then potentially come January time, he can be talking to other clubs with the view of being a free agent. Now, from my point of view, that'll probably be more appealing for the top clubs, the Arsenals, the Man Uniteds, even big clubs abroad. If they know they can come and get Orford Toney for absolutely free, then I think possibly he'd have more interest. So basically, if he runs down his contract, he'll probably have a lot more options within 6 months or whatever to potentially go to other clubs. Realistically, the only way I can see West Ham getting Toney is if we really go in for him and make him feel loved and tell him he's going to be the number one man, offer him really good wages and potentially offer him a 4 or 5 year deal. Realistically, I think that's the only way that we're going to get him. But it seems more like it's going to be Duran than Toney or any other striker. But I'm still holding for Mr. Toney, because I think he'd be great at West Ham. Going back to the potential deal for Duran, obviously Lewis Orford has been mentioned going to the other way to Aston Villa. I do believe that they've been showing an interest in him for a while, and I think they made an approach a little while ago before we approached them for Duran. So he's a player that Aston Villa would definitely like. He's only got 1 year left on his current contract with West Ham, and I've heard today that we've initiated new talks with him over a new contract, so that's positive. I really wouldn't want to lose Lewis Orford, because he's come through the academy. He is a West Ham fan. He said he's a West Ham fan, and if Aston Villa want him, then there must be something about him. You know, we buy Duran for just say 35 million and Orford, and then a year down the line, Duran's not doing it for West Ham, and then Orford's really doing well. How gutting would that be? Lewis Orford in the 2022-2023 season scored 9 goals and had 12 assists from 19 games, which for a midfielder is great. Last season he got promoted up until the under-21s but didn't play as much. But I think we've got a real good core of youth players coming through now with a lot of potential that I'll do a separate video on. One more player that I want to talk about that is just totally off my back, that isn't being muted in the media or anything like that, is a lad called Toney Szmodics, who's a Blackburn player, and he was the Championship's top goal scorer last season with 27 league goals and 33 goals all in. 33 goals he scored last season. But surprisingly enough, he's not even a striker. He's a midfielder. He plays predominantly as a number 10. Plus, conveniently enough, he just happens to be a massive West Ham fan. He is 28 years old, so he's not a young lad. He's a massive West Ham fan, and he's been quoted as saying that he still comes to West Ham to watch games when he can, which is always a massive bonus for me. You know, Orford, Toney Szmodics, George Urphy, Scholes, these guys, they're all West Ham fans. You know, and you don't really get that. You don't really get that in the modern game anymore. I'd say maybe teams like Man United and Liverpool, they really nurture through the top talent, and they have them homegrown kind of players that support the club playing for them. And like, as a West Ham fan, I think I speak for most of us, having a guy out there who you know is a supporter, i.e. like Mark Noble, that just adds that little bit of like togetherness, and because you know he wants to do well, and you know he's going to push, and you know he cares, and you know, so I think having that core of West Ham kind of connection there is important. So Toney Szmodics, a bit quiet on transfer rumours. Obviously, I haven't heard that we're interested in him, but I think he'd be a great little coup, because he'd come to West Ham probably on the premise that he's not promised to play every week, and he would come and he'd be hungry, and if he got his chance to score a few goals, he's just a great squad player to have, that if he come in and made an impression, could end up scoring some really important goals for us. So I'm going to wrap that up for now. I am going to be doing a lot more content, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And as usual, like I always say, I really like to get comments. Any thoughts of anything I've just said, please leave comments and I'll try to reply to them. But for now, keep safe. Let's look forward to the season. I'm very optimistic. Let's go again and get back into Europe. Come on, you Irons.